SCLD and YU would like to acknowledge many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories where York University campuses are located, which precede the establishment of York University. Our podcast is produced and recorded on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. Hey Lions! Welcome to Student Conversations, Stories, and Lessons, where we explore the journey of students navigating through the complexities of leadership, personal, and professional growth. We are your hosts, Sakina Hassan Ali and
Janat Yacobi.
And this series is all about diving deep into the real stories behind the student experience. Stories that inspire, challenge, and empower us to grow. In each episode, we will sit in with students from diverse backgrounds to discuss the challenges they have faced, the lessons they have learned, and how they become the leaders they are today.
Whether you are just starting in your academic journey, in the midst of it, or looking ahead to what is next, this podcast is your space to gain insights, find inspiration, and connect with shared experiences of others. So, without further ado, welcome to our episode, Patience, Leadership, and Student Success. Today, we will explore why patience is imperative to personal and academic success, and additionally, we'll be sharing tools with you guys on how you can apply and identify and manage triggers of impatience.
Hiba, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We're so happy to have you.
Likewise, I'm happy to be here.
It's a pleasure. How are you feeling today?
Feeling good. Happy to be here. Excited to do this podcast with actually my friends.
No.
So it's great to be here. Always happy.
No, Hiba, I've known Hiba since, we were in Frosh together.
We Frosh together, yes.
Yeah,
yes, we
Froshies.
did. Yeah, small world. And I became Sakina's Frosh leader. So it's a very
Look
first
at
local
that.
moment.
Look at that.
Look at
Definitely.
that. Love it over here.
Folks, Hiba here is in her 4th year majoring in Law and Society and completing a certificate in Refugee and Migration Studies. She is a student success mentor lead with Black's Excellence at York, and she is also vice president of the Law and Society Students Association and the co-vice president of administration of the Women in Law Association. One thing she especially loves to do in her free time is reading.
I do love to read.
Oh, yeah.
Great hobby.
So, Hiba, let's just get right into it. Our topic for today is going to be patience, leadership, and success. The first thing I want to touch on is just asking you how you manage a heavy workload in the day-to-day life, and if you feel patient in itself is something that really gets you through the day. I mean, handling so much, and I just mentioned a little bit about you. It looks like you're very involved in campus, and the thing that came to Janet's and mine mind was, well, how does someone get through that? And to us, it was the having and embodying patience.
I think trying to manage, honestly, comes a lot with me in spirituality. I'm somebody that tries to focus so much on religion. I'm a firm believer in trusting the process. So when I do manage a heavy workload as I am right now, I'm trying to take everything one step at a time, even though sometimes it may feel like I'm doing a lot at once. And for me, I like to believe that everything does happen for a reason. And even if things aren't meant to be for me right now, then they'll be meant either for someone else or in another time for myself later on. And so trying to manage a heavy workload just comes with reassuring myself that I can do it, that it's not impossible, and that this is just one state in life that I am right now and it won't be like this forever. So I think that's something I try to keep in my mind for the most part. And I do enjoy it. That's definitely something I think that is always helpful for myself. I'm trying to remind myself that I do what I do because I enjoy it, and I'm doing it not just to help myself but to better other students, right? So ensuring that I'm consistent with I have the same mindset that I had when I first started, which is to do it to help other people, whether that be through clubs or through work, etc. That everyone's happy just as much as I'm happy.
Yeah, and just because one thing about Hiba, for anyone that knows her, and this is like for anyone that doesn't know her, is that no matter what, like anytime I see her, there's always a smile on her face. There's always this positive energy and aura, and she's so great and so tactful when it comes down to managing all the like responsibilities, extracurriculars, the work study position. And, this is why we believe that, like, you're such a great person to talk about patience with, because it's, you're dealing with people all the time, you're managing your studies, and it must not be easy. Like, can you share like how it was? Because it's like, no one just sort of like falls from the sky being able to like take all this in, right away. So, like how was it initially dealing and managing everything and just being patient along the way?
Honestly, it's difficult. I won't even lie to you. Even for students that are interested in, getting into extracurriculars or knowing in themselves that they do tend to manage a heavier workload, I like for them to prioritize themselves, and that's a lesson I'm learning constantly, that I need to prioritize myself, and it's something I'm still challenging. It's something that's still challenging for myself. I guess for me, it goes back to what I said, like trusting the process is very big for myself, and everything does happen for a reason. As much as I hate it sometimes to say it, it's my reality, and because I'm working to be so aligned with my faith, I think it's important that I remind myself that I'm just a human and that things will happen the way they are meant to happen. Trying to be positive for myself and be positive for other people is just better, because I like to believe that me being positive can help one person at the end of the day. It's not going to help a ton, but at least can make one person's day better.
Yeah.
And for myself, ideally, I like to believe that if I try to go out of my way and have a smile and just keep doing what I do, that it will get better even in times of struggle. So for myself, managing a heavy workload, it's not bad. I have a really great support system, so I'm very blessed and I'm very happy to have that. I have 2 friends here right now that I can consider my support system, right? So I'm very grateful for the people that I have, and they definitely are a huge part in doing what I do and why I do it, I guess, so well in this case, as the host I've already said, right? So yeah.
I think on that note, you just shared a little bit about how you are able to manage the big workload. Like you mentioned, a support system is always good for us, and having, I'd say, different layers of a support system as well. So like there's your family at home, and then there's maybe your friends that are outside, and maybe like in the workplace you have a different support system. Being able to have like a good relationship with your manager is also something I find that work study students find themselves more successful and ultimately more patient going through like this summer semester, at least.
Agreed.
I know like when we were working in the summer, we found ourselves just being able to have more patience when you're able to have that right support system around you. Just to transition a little bit into the definition or how we'd really define patience, Jonathan and I, we sat down and we talked about how we would define patience. And we said initially that, it's this ability to feel calm and collected, even through the adversities that life may present us. So, even if we're feeling a struggle or like anxiousness, but taking that deep breath before just walking back into your task or whatever you're struggling with. So really taking it step by step, like you mentioned. That was initially what we started with, and we wanted to just ask for you to contribute to our definition that we kind of develop here together.
I guess my definition of patience would be, I would say, believing that things will always work out, and that taking, like you folks said, taking things one step at a time is really important, especially when you are in times of hardship, right? And so for me, honestly, I feel like you folks already hit the nail on the head when it came to that. I think patience is just essentially not just trusting the process, but trusting that things will pan out in a way that will always be meant for you, even if it's not the way that you envisioned, right? So yeah. I think that's just really important to keep in mind.
So saying it would ultimately lead to successful outcomes, or trusting that process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I think one aspect of patience, and I feel like, the way you just like, correct me if I'm wrong, like
Sure.
The way you were talking about it, it's essentially not worrying about the things you can't control.
Absolutely. You have to just trust what you haven't, what's in your control right now, because everything else outside of that can't be changed or can't be maneuvered in the way that you envision it to be.
right?
Yeah.
And there's no point in like wasting that energy
Yeah.
because that's also wasting time, energy if you can't control it, right? So
Right.
Yeah,
And those
because
things, yeah.
definitely.
because one thing I don't know if you would relate to this, Hiba, is like especially within my works, like within the work study position at SCLD, there are like certain times that my patience is tested, but when I like sort of, like get out of my own head and I analyze those situations, I tend to lose my patience in situations that I can't control. Like there's so much of that energy that's wasted. And that was one thing I was even talking to my coordinator today, that like, she was just telling me that life becomes a lot easier when it's like you just sort of like let go and accept that, there are some times that there are going to be failures. There are some times that, things are not going to necessarily go your way.
Absolutely. I'd say for myself, that's something I'm still trying to teach myself now. If there's things that I can't control, and I've run into the same situation with you multiple times where there's going to be things that don't go my way because they are out of my control. Rather than me be angry on it for a long period of time, it's okay to be upset about it or feel how you want to feel. But knowing that it's out of your control is also a reminder to myself that things will just have to move the way that they're meant to move. And with that, I'm trying my best to just kind of move forward. For me, one thing I'm also trying to remind myself is not to dwell on things that I can't control, especially in times where there may be cases where if you're working on something new and you reminisce about how something happened in the past that might relate to it, and you wonder, oh, what if this could have changed or what if that could have changed? At the end of the day, it hasn't changed and it panned out the way it was meant to pan out, right? Whether I liked it or not. So for myself, trying to remind me or my team or anyone around me that things will just have to move the way that they are and we are just going to have to settle is important to know in general.
I also wanted to add on the note of like settling. I think that would, if it had to happen, it would have to come after, figuring out what you can do about the situation, right? We're talking here about especially when we feel like we can't do anything anymore, but being able to take the time to understand your situation that you're in, and having the patience within that in itself is important, but just taking that time to understand your situation so that you can look at it again with a fresh mind and analyze what you can do in that situation. Because sometimes we think that there's nothing we can do about something, and that's why we get super stressed and ultimately impatient. And I think if we avoid the stress, we wouldn't suffer with having impatience as something, that we regularly struggle with. So, if we're able to navigate through situations and, like you said, Jenna, just like come outside your own head, right? If you come outside your own head and you look at the situation and you analyze its factors, you can then look into, okay, what is in my control? Because then it's not so negative as like, okay, this isn't in my control, this isn't in my control, but you can look at what is in your control because that's something you can change.
And looking at it from, the flip side of the coin, let's talk about the things that we can control. And, you made this point, Hiba, that the dynamics within your team, like it ends up, and even the dynamics within your like interpersonal relationship, it shifts when you have that mindset of like you can't control and like focusing on the things you can control. And, something I was thinking about is, one thing I can control and embodying this quality and having that patience as a leader, it really strengthens your relationships with others, is like listening to others, being mindful about others, and being in the present. And, there was this video that I was watching about patience, and, it was a TED Talk, and the guy was talking about how patience can be seen in like little things during the day. Is like, you're meeting a colleague of yours and they come to you and say like, like you say to them like, hey, how are you? Like, how's your day going? And they say like, oh, I'm not really doing well. And sometimes instinctually there are times when people are like, oh, okay, like, we'll have a great day. And then you just walk off. So like patience is taking that step of being mindful and being empathetic and saying like, oh, like, what's going on? Like, is there, and, you were talking about being positive and bringing your most positive self, and, nothing wrong with showing times where like you're feeling down and everything, but like bringing that positive aura into the way you deal with people, it makes that 1% difference.
Absolutely. I think one thing I also wanted to add on as well is that even if someone is struggling and they do let you know that your day is not going well, in some cases, being mindful would also you can also ask them and say, hey, do you want to talk about it? If you're comfortable, yes. If not, that's okay. Just letting them know that they also have an extra shoulder to cry on. If they do need it, is also really important as well. Because some people just prefer to not maybe express how they're feeling or explain why they may be feeling the way that they are, but reassuring them that you're there is also important because it lets them know that someone is present and is willing to hear them.
Yeah.
Because I think that's also so important because some people just don't want to speak sometimes and would rather just feel how they want to feel alone, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. And it took me a long time to learn that, to just let things be and let people be, and if they're ready to talk, they will talk.
Oh, yeah. I guess one thing that really strengthened my dynamic with you, Hiba, is like, there was that period of time that
Right.
we talked, and even though it was like few minutes during the day, like passing by, we'd have our little like rendezvous. But even you, like, and that's one thing I really appreciated about you to this day. It's like that patience of like, you know what, I will stand and like listen to you and like acknowledge you as a human being. And, connecting it to what success means to us. We were talking about emotional intelligence and what it means to be an emotionally intelligent person. And, successful people are the ones that, not necessarily have the high IQs, but have that high EQ. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
Right?
we get a snap on that,
Right?
y'all, please? I can't snap very well, but I just want to let you know
Right?
that
Like,
was
Yeah.
chef's kiss.
I can't really-
Beautiful. My snap is not good. I can tell you that right now. But I'm snapping in my heart.
No, in spirit.
Always.
I guess
Yeah.
just to kind of move the conversation into another topic, I did want to bring up, focusing on progress rather than perfection.
Ooh, that was nice.
So
Yeah.
I'll say that
Ooh,
again.
that was
so
very
we can,
nice.
Frame that. We got to frame
Frame
that.
it.
we got to like reflect on ourselves for a second. So progress over perfection. So on that topic, on progress over perfection, what are your thoughts on that?
It's a lovely title. I don't know who came up with it, but it was 10 out of 10. I just have to note that right there.
Beautiful.
Very beautiful.
I mean, no one said it the way I said it. So I like progress over perfection. I was reading into the concept.
yeah.
But do you like my word over?
Yeah. I think
It's like I can see it in an
Yeah.
equation.
it's definitely, It's, what is it? E equals MC squared. That's what it was giving. Like everything just
Math
kind of
makes
made
sense.
sense. Yeah.
Right.
I'm not in math.
There was a
but I just wanted
flow.
to- yeah.
There was a flow.
10 out of 10.
Thank you.
But yeah, let me be serious. Progress over perfection. I think in relation to, I would say for patients, it's so important. I think it's a topic that I'm still learning today. For myself, I will be quite honest, I am a serious perfectionist.
Yeah.
And when things don't go well, it will bother me, to be
I know what
honest.
you mean.
It
Yeah.
will bother me. So for me, trying to focus on the progress that I made constantly is also a reminder to myself that I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
And that my progress is just enough to remind myself that I'm doing great, and things will never be perfect because perfect doesn't exist. It's subjective, and it's subjective for a reason, and it's made to hold ourselves to a high standard, I would say.
Yeah.
And reminding yourself of the progress even when you're down is so important, because you don't realize how far you got because you're so fixated on the moment that you're in when you are struggling and facing adversity.
Yeah.
So for myself, it's a reminder to be patient, but it's also a reminder to myself that I'm only human, and that I can only do what I'm meant to do, and what I'm able to do in terms of the limits that I'm placed in, depending on the situation, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
It goes back to that saying, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Yeah.
That was nice.
Yeah. So I'm
Very
not taking
nice.
the credits for that. So
No, it was a quote. We
yeah,
promise.
it was a quote somewhere
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
vast sea of that internet. It was I
Said
came
to-
across on my
no.
feed.
That's an incredible quote to bring up, and I constantly remind myself that as well, just through going through adversities of life. When you remind yourself that things are happening for you, it's a positive light that you're giving, your
Yeah.
adversities. And I think that's so important and also contributes to our patience ultimately. It's kind of like, I was talking to someone about this today, and they were saying, stress doesn't exist if you pretend it doesn't exist. I'm not saying suppress the stress. I'm just saying you could change it around and give it a different light and look at your problems in a different way, where now the stress doesn't exist and therefore you're not being brought down by it. And I think in the same way, when you're looking at patience, if you before you get to that impatient part of you, or before you let yourself get impatient, you could take the steps necessary to avoid that, right? What are your thoughts on that?
No, that's like really interesting, because I've noticed that, and this comes with like deep reflection, introspection, and becoming more self-aware, that like through the years I've noticed what triggers me when it comes down to like, oh, like I feel myself starting that, like, I think we can all relate, like you feel that starting itch of like, okay, I'm starting to get irritated, I'm starting to lose that patience. And I think it's taking that step to like recognize that. And like, I don't know what it is with me, with a lot of things that I deal with. And like, Hiba, you can like comment on this. It's like,
sure.
there are times that for like, I bite more than I can chew. And I'm like, no, I think I'll be able to deal with this. And I'll be
So
able to,
often.
you know, really trough through that, that ditch. But I feel like what really guarantees that success and just is identifying that, you know what, this is not something I'm not going to be able to deal with. And that doesn't make you a less of a person.
Oh, I've been told this so many times. I'm still being told this today, that I definitely sometimes bite off more than I can chew. For me, it's a pro and a con in some cases,
Yeah.
because for myself, I bite off more than I can chew because I do it in good spirit and I do it to help the people
Oh
that
yeah,
I care
that
about.
good intention.
Always. It's
Yeah.
always with good intention. And in some cases, it doesn't work out. And it just leads me not to failure, but to serious struggle. And sometimes put me in a situation where I have to choose over two things or multiple things that I love, and I have to drop one of them, which kind of hurts in that case. I think both of you touched on great points. There were so many things I wanted to say, but I was like, I don't know how to formulate it. Best thing I can
Very
say
good.
is
Very
that
good.
I can 100% relate, and it's something I'm still learning to teach myself today, that there's some cases where you think you can bite off more than you can chew, and you just have to be realistic with what you want
Yeah.
to do,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you manage multiple things at once. And
Oh,
this is
yeah.
only like a short time in our life. So
Mhm.
in some cases, when I am in situations where I realize I may just be having too much on my plate, one thing I try to remind myself is that this is only a state of your life right now, and it's going to fly very
Mhm.
quickly. Like, time is already flying right now.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So for me, it's a reminder that I still can do it, even though it'll be struggle. But I remind myself it's always going to be worth it. It'll always be
Yeah.
worth it for those
your
that I'm
growth,
helping,
too.
for my
Yeah.
growth,
Mhm.
for people I care about. As long as somebody is happy, that means I already did my job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to include yourself in that if you're happy as well.
Oh, I'm learning too.
that's- Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I don't. Not sometimes. Let me not lie to the viewers. A lot of times I don't.
Yeah.
But it's worth it for the other people. So for me, it's okay.
Yeah, no.
But no, definitely, like, thank you for touching on these points. And, you know, you continue to smile on campus for all of us, and we'll continue to do the same for you.
Appreciate it.
So just on that note, though, I wanted to kind of mention the strategy of using time blocking. You know, if you feel like there's too much you're handling or too much on your plate, what's the tools we can use now to navigate? Because to an extent, I do feel that there could always be too much on our plates, but that always helps us grow. But it'll only be that there's too much on our plates if we're not finding a way to handle it all, right?
Right.
Like, for example, if you take even 3 courses throughout the year, right?
Right.
And you're like a part-time student,
Sure.
that could feel extremely overwhelming if you don't have good time blocking skills.
Absolutely.
If you're taking 5 courses, that could also feel extremely stressful and a lot to handle. But if you had good time blocking skills in place, then it could feel a lot more, you know, like doable. So that, let's just talk about that. Like
Sure.
time blocking. How do you suggest, you know, folks can pick that up?
Time blocking for myself. One skill I use, I have a calendar in my room. I use it every single day. I love that calendar. I'm very attached. I think it's quite obvious by now.
Where'd
Is
you
it
get
like
that?
a big
Where'd
calendar?
you
Do you
get
have
that
a lot of-
calendar from?
It was actually not even mine. My brother loaned it to me. I use it every day.
and you just keep it
Nice.
now.
Everything I do is on that calendar.
Love that.
Nice,
everything.
I
nice.
love that.
It
It's a
is
big one?
It is a big one. It's
Okay.
like those monthly calendars.
Got you,
Oh.
yeah.
So resetting for a month should be an aesthetic. Like, it's so nice.
Are
to
there
do.
like
Yeah.
sticky notes and stuff on it?
There isn't, but I used to have pins, and whenever I have a picture, I would use it to pin it up. So
Oh my
Oh,
God. I love
nice.
that.
yeah, just
Gotta
thinking
make it
of-
aesthetic. You gotta
Always.
make it aesthetic.
always.
Romanticize your life, definitely.
Yeah,
Oh,
even
yeah.
though it's not pretty sometimes, I won't lie.
You gotta
At
make
least the board is pretty.
The board looks 10 out of 10. My marker colors, amazing. They switch every month. I
My
feel so
God.
cool. I feel very old saying that, but that's okay.
Not at all. We relate to
we,
that.
we
We're-
have a Muji pen
Oh
problem.
God, I did my little haul, and I'm like, I girl mathed it. I'm like, you know
Love
what?
that.
This is for my books. This is for my annotations. This is for my school, education.
Oh, so you're up. That's basically what you're saying. I know those pens are like $5 each.
$2 and
They
I
were
think
hurting.
60 cents, but it's okay. It's okay.
It's okay, girl math. It's worth it
It's
as long
okay.
as you use
I'll
it.
skip the coffees for a good
Yeah.
month. It's okay.
It's
Yeah.
calm. We'll work on it.
Yeah.
But back to time blocking, I would say I use a calendar often. Sometimes I also use my phone calendar if I can't write stuff on my physical calendar. Reminders.
Multiple places, I feel like you were gonna say reminders. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think multiple places is like a really good thing because then you have it like everywhere.
absolutely.
I don't know if that's just my mind or like it. Maybe it's like people who actually need to be like reminded constantly throughout the day. Yeah, me too.
I
And I
love
think that
reminders.
just
So
it just
often.
helps like you feel less stressed ultimately when you
Right.
get these reminders.
Right.
Yeah, no, please go on.
Yeah, reminders. I use reminders for things I can't remember or won't put in my calendar. There's gonna be very few things. So if I'm taking other classes or have this assignment to do, etc., I put reminders on my phone and I'll make them hourly. Like I get those notifications every hour because I need to remind myself of that. But that's me. I'm a very visual person, so I need to be reminded of things. For other students, I would say find the best agenda or calendar format that works for you. Maybe a physical calendar may not work for you. It works for me. And that's why I think it's super important to find what kind of works for you in those cases. Some people have an agenda. Some people have
Planners don't work for me.
Planners do not work for me. I'm not a planner
I wasted
girl.
a lot of money.
I waste so much money. The poor tree, like all this paper, and I don't even use it, man. It's so silly.
But collecting dust.
I
in the
gotta
corner.
suggest one thing that is a really big hot take because Sakina, before my work study
I
position,
love the third person switch.
but-
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, 10
yeah,
out of
it's
10.
like omnipotent.
Yeah.
yeah, no,
It's a nice word.
Called
You know, you're a very
stuttering.
literate person. It's one of the first
Thank
things I
you.
learned about you.
Thank you.
I
You
actually
speak in
noticed that
such nice.
too.
You speak so well.
All love.
For real.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
I'm sending it back.
Right there.
Yeah,
There you
right
go. Right
there.
there. Right
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Right
yeah.
there.
You guys know if you do 3 sides, it's the 3D heart.
Let's
What?
do it quickly.
So do
Let's
that
Let's
and
do
then put
it.
it like, if you put
If
one.
people are listening to this over
Yeah, you can't
Spotify
see.
or
We're
other
like-
things, they can't see it.
They can't see it.
We're
But if
like
you put your
making a
hand right
finger
here
heart.
and I put it here,
There you
right
go.
there,
There
it's a 3D
you
heart.
go.
What?
I do have a really big hot take. Sakina in the past would not have used a Excel sheet.
Oh, she.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, organization.
Oh,
Thank
Okay.
you. Shout out to my coordinator because at SCLD, definitely Lena helped me to be able to become comfortable with using Excel.
Oh, nice.
It's still making me like pinch my hands right now when I'm talking because it makes me anxious a little bit still. Like Excel was just for me, it was very overwhelming to look at all those grids and just it's never ending. It's like a never ending page. Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit scary sometimes because sometimes I like that fixed structure. Like I'm like, okay, I want to fit it in this box, you know? And so for me, it was very uncomfortable to use. But once you learn how to truly use Excel, and I'm going to suggest this to literally everyone who wants to become organized, especially if you're a digital planner type of person. Yeah, like calendars work really good there. Just your day-to-day tasks. There's even this feature that, remember one of our colleagues were showing us? He actually had everything input in an Excel sheet.
to be able to calculate his grade. So he
Yeah.
would put the percentage of what that assignment midterm grade was worth. And then he would color code it with like, oh, if I got over like 80%, it would be green, like he passed it. And then if
Yeah.
he went under a certain quota, then it would like turn red. So
And there was
really
like even the
interesting.
scaling between
You
the
guys
two,
have
like
mathematicians and stuff in your
oh, he's
office.
in the engineering.
Engineering.
Yeah,
Oh,
engineering.
So he's just up basically. That's what you're saying.
I mean, we're all up. We're not doing
engineering.
anything.
Engineering is a different. We can have that conversation another time. But
Oh yeah.
oh yeah, you know Excel still frightens me till this day at my big age.
I stay away from it.
Excel creates fears.
Oh,
It
yeah.
does.
It
It
does.
still scares me, but once you learn to become more comfortable with it, it's definitely something like it's gonna be a tool that helps you. Learning anything new is scary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And
I mean,
having that patience to be able to go through it makes it
Yeah.
all worth
Yeah.
it. And
Excel is one of my biggest fears.
Yeah.
that big deep breath.
yeah, exactly.
This is a common thing in
Yeah.
our
I hope you
episodes.
enjoy
No,
it.
honestly, no, and it's a good practice. And I
Yeah.
guess, to wrap it all up and, and before we end off this wonderful episode, one last point that I wanted to make and, hear Sakina and Hiba, like your thoughts on it, is more than just being patient with others. I think one of the biggest things is being patient with yourself, honestly. Because that's one thing that, when you start implementing those habits in your day-to-day life, and I feel like a lot of impatience comes from not being patient with yourself,
Yeah, agreed.
and especially with entering a new job, starting university for our first years out there, and just trying new things in life. You have to take things one step at a time. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it before we end off our episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I think honestly recognizing where your patience lies in your friendships, in yourself, in your family life is super important. And you are aware of the levels that can kind of trigger your patience. So sometimes when you know you're getting irritated, like you mentioned earlier, you'll know that you need to either step back or find something else to do in that moment. So being cognizant of your triggers when it comes to whatever you're doing is super important, because that will also trigger your patience.
Oh yeah.
And in some cases you'll become very impatient and very what's the word? Impatient.
Stressed with yourself. Like you
Stressed
got to
with
give yourself
yourself,
that grace. I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of people, they just
Yeah.
don't give themselves that grace.
I
I'm
was
those
gonna
people. I
It's
do
time.
not give
It's
I
time,
need to.
Hiba.
Yeah, so many people tell
It's
me
time.
I need to start giving myself some more grace. It's something you learn. Like
Yeah.
it
Over
takes a long time
it
to learn.
just- it
Absolutely.
develops.
Yeah.
The ironic thing here was that my comments was going to be give yourself some grace.
Oh, we were telepathic.
What?
There was a telepathy.
Have
There
you
was
all
a-
heard of hijabology? I created it.
oh.
It's like
You
connected.
We were like,
This one is
I
not
made
even.
it
I'm
up.
not even gonna snap. I'm gonna clap.
Yeah,
Well, clap for
hijabology
you,
is when
Hiba.
Step up.
hijabis connect telepathically. Is
Yeah.
that the word?
Yep,
But we're
yep.
not all the
Whoa.
same. Wait, let's tell them that. One
We're
second.
not all
and we
the
don't
same?
know each other. We don't
We
all
don't.
know each other. So don't ask me, oh, I have a coworker,
It's
Asma.
not the same.
I don't know Asma.
I don't know.
I do know what
It's when you
Asma,
work,
but-
when you spend a lot of time with someone. You know, when you spend a lot of time with girls, you get synced. It happens with hijabis. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's something.
Telepathy is a very real thing.
There's something.
Such a fun note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us,
Yeah.
Hiba.
Thank you for
It
having
was
me.
a pleasure to have you on
Oh
today's
yeah,
podcast.
as always.
It's always nice to
Our
be with the
conversations
hosts.
are always so enlightening. And you know
kind.
what? Thank you as well for listening and tuning in, and share this episode with your friends, and we'll see you next time. Take
See
care.
y'all.
Bye.
Bye.